Hi, and welcome to another episode of Emerald Isle Vacation Home Specialist. I am your host, Dennis Richkovsky. Some of you recognize me as the co-owner of Flip Flops Donuts, and some of you know me as your broker of real estate who specializes in waterfront and waterview properties along the Crystal Coast, especially on Bogue Banks and in my town of Emerald Isle, North Carolina. On this channel, you will find essential information from the inside scoops on buying and selling houses to how to live with the ocean, rivers, and sounds that define the Crystal Coast. Today's episode is all about my love for Carolina Clam Chowder. Whether you visit here occasionally or live here full time, knowing about the history and the making of Carolina Clam Chowder is a story worth telling. Before I begin, please subscribe to my video channel now or at the end of this episode. Most Americans would say that the United States has two clam chowders, the creamy, thick New England style and the tomato-based Manhattan kind. They know this due in part to the Campbell's Soup Company, bringing both soups to the masses. Who didn't grow up with mom pouring a can of clam chowder into a pot? Living in North Carolina, as I do on Bogue Banks, I would argue that there are three types of clam chowders in America, the third and best being North Carolina's own. Some people call it the Hatteras clam chowder, others call it the Down East clam chowder, but I simply call it clam chowder because here in North Carolina, it's always made with mostly clams. Agreeing on a clam chowder recipe is no small deal. In the northeastern United States where I grew up, and where those other two chowders are from, people were passionate over which recipe they preferred. Milk or cream-based New England style with potatoes and onions, or the Manhattan style featuring a tomato base, chunks of tomato, along with soup vegetables like carrots, peppers, and onions, seasoned with garlic and red pepper flakes. Critics of Manhattan clam chowder think that tomatoes pollute the stew. So does milk or cream, as far as native coastal North Carolinians are concerned. They put nothing but clams, potatoes, onions, and water in their clam chowder because they like chowder that tastes like fresh clams. Salt pork goes into some North Carolina pots for seasoning, and cornmeal dumplings floated on top provided the extra bulk men and women needed for the hard work of fishing, farming, and tending homesteads. Coastal North Carolina families like mine still love the basic Carolina clam chowder. While North Carolina might not come to mind when you think of clams, the state has a growing clam farming industry in the sounds and estuaries around the Outer Banks and offers a steady supply to the entire East Coast. It's more than possible that the last cherry stone or little necks you supped on came from our waters. Indeed, it's hard to imagine my wife ordering her pound of peel and eat shrimp at Jordan's restaurant without a first course of Carolina clam chowder. It never goes out of style, and it never comes in a can. Now, I must caution you, the Carolina clam chowder is an acquired taste. The waitresses at Jordan's always gave a disclaimer when customers ordered their chowder. This is not the creamy, thick version you might be expecting. This is the thin, water-based broth. That being said, the distinctive quality of the Carolina clam chowder is that it's made with a broth that is essentially just fresh clam juice, seasoned sometimes with a little salt pork or fatback. Unlike the New England or Manhattan styles, Carolina cooks don't put milk, cream, or tomato juice in the broth. I enjoy these other clam chowders too, but I am wholly partial to our Carolina version now. This kind of clam chowder can be found most commonly in homes between Hatteras Island and Salter Path on Bogue Banks, an area known as Down East. Its origins are lost in the sands of time, but more than likely this clam chowder originated with the Algonquin Indians, who once dug clams and grew corn by these shores. Because of the way it captures the essence of Bogue Banks, where I now live, it somehow does seem like an ancient recipe to me. Indeed, it has been a part of the Outer Banks diet for over 200 years. There are tales of family recipes being handed down from generation to generation, dating back to the early 19th century. Over the generations, coastal Carolina people could always look to this kind of clam chowder to get through tough winters when cold northeast winds are howling and the ocean is pounding the beaches. Made with only fresh clams and their juices, potatoes, onions, and a little black pepper, and usually, but not always, served with corn dumplings, this most traditional of clam chowders is a simple, almost austere fare, yet unbelievably tasty. The reason is simple. Everyone had the last harvest's onions and potatoes in dry storage, and most had pork, salt, meat available. The cornmeal for the optional dumplings was usually abundant as well, because in the old days, coastal families often obtained the corn by trading salt fish or oysters with farmers who lived upriver. And given the location, anybody could get out and get clams. They were always on the shore, always available to all, and always available at low tide. Whether it's a little neck, cherry stone, top neck, or quahog, they're all the quahog species of clam. It's mainly a question of size and cost. The larger size clams will cost less than the smaller size clams, which are thought to be more tender. Whichever way you go, they must be fresh and in the shell. Here's a recipe. The ingredients include 4 cups of shucked clams and juice, about 24 chowder clams or 100 little necks, 3 cups diced potatoes, 2 cups diced onions, 4 cups water, and 6 pieces saltback or fatback bacon, fried with the grease rendered. Chop the clams, drain the juices, and reserve them. Now, in a large pot, add the grease and chopped onion and let cook for a few minutes. Add the clams and their juices. Simmer, covered. Stir occasionally so the clams don't stick to the bottom of the pot. After about 10 minutes, add 4 cups of water. Cook on a low boil for 30 minutes, adding more water as necessary. Add the cubed potatoes and black pepper to taste. I like lots of black pepper. Cook for another 30 minutes. If you are going to add the cornmeal dumplings, do so about 10 minutes before the chowder is ready. These dumplings may be traditional, but I only have had them one time in a restaurant, Frost, in Salter Path, several decades ago. I wasn't a big fan. Another acquired taste, I suspect. With or without dumplings, this chowder could be a nice addition to your Thanksgiving Day feast. And when you want to learn more about what is happening in Emerald Isle, subscribe to my newsletter by texting your email address to 919-308-2292. Or sign up for my blog on my website, www.eihomesforsale.com, and subscribe to Emerald Isle Vacation Home Specialist on YouTube at the end of this video. So stay well and stay safe. So come on down. Please subscribe to my channel below and definitely return next week to the same bat channel at the same bat time of 9 a.m. on Thursday for yet another episode of Emerald Isle Vacation Home Specialist.